Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast, Season 3, Episode 35 today here on this Saturday, May 7th, 2022. I'm just starting a couple minutes early before 9 o'clock. But anyways, this is one of my earliest podcasts, but I'm looking forward to my guests this morning. Her name is Ashley Miller. She's a sports anchor reporter for WNYT Channel 13 in Albany, New York area. And she's also a sideline reporter for the National Lacrosse League's Albany Firewolves as well. And I'm looking forward to speaking to her a little bit about her career and talking about the National Lacrosse League playoffs, which I watched last night, the Toronto and Halifax game, which was outstanding. The Rock won 14-13 in overtime, and they play now the winner of Albany Buffalo tonight at 7:30. And Colorado upset Calgary last night, so Colorado moves on and faces the winner of Philadelphia, San Diego. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Ashley about the National Lacrosse League and how the Firewolves have done in Albany in their first year since moving from New England. So just bear with me, guys, and I'll bring on my guest. And I'm looking forward to speaking with her this morning on this Saturday, May 7th, which is hard to believe. So good morning, Ashley. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little tired, but I'm excited about doing the podcast with you.
I know. Sorry for the early wake-up call.
No worries. It was worth it. And I was just mentioning that I watched that game last night between the Rock and Thunderbirds, and it was one hell of a game.
What a game. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. That's what you expect for a playoff game, Chris, but you don't always get it. That game was fantastic. It's funny. I had fallen asleep a little bit early, woke up in the middle of the night, and was watching highlights on Twitter. And I just thought, holy cow, this game is awesome. Yeah, really cool. I mean, anytime you get an overtime game, you got to love it. But what a game. The Rock moves on 14-13 and a crazy ending to that game with the goal in overtime on the breakaway by Challen Rogers. Pretty good for the Rock.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's one thing I've learned about lacrosse going to the games in Hamilton and Buffalo is no matter how big a league a team has, the game is not over until it says 0. Like there's so much turns up and down in these games.
Yeah, and listen, they always say sports is a game of runs. Most teams will tell you any sport is a game of runs, but Toronto got out to a 5-0 lead last night. And that kind of disappeared pretty quickly. And then even, I think, heading to the fourth, they were up by like 3. So you don't expect a lead or maybe 4. You don't expect a lead like that to disappear. But Halifax did a great job fighting back, scored goals really, really quickly, and had the momentum going to overtime. So good for Toronto for being able to stop that, because sometimes that's hard to do. When the momentum gets swung the other way, it's hard to then rebound and come back and get that overtime winner. But it can happen fast in overtime.
Yeah, I saw that last week in Buffalo. The Bandits were up 5-1 at halftime, and the fans are like, this game's pretty well over. And then the second half, the Rock just shut down the Bandits and outscored them 9-2 in the second half to win 10-7. And I'll tell you this, everyone's talking about the Bandits, of course, but the Toronto Rock have a really solid team, and they're going to be, whoever plays them next week, it's going to be a tough out.
Yeah, and I know they've been a really tough matchup for Albany. They've been a really tough matchup for a lot of teams this season, but they've certainly got the talent. They've, aside from Buffalo, been the second best team in the East all season long. And I agree. I think they're playing well at the right time. And this is nothing against Buffalo. It's the end of the season, and games didn't necessarily really matter to them. But they've lost 3 of their last 4, I believe it is. So they're not, that's not something that you want to have happen toward the end of the season when you now have to turn it on and beat a really good Albany team that has proven they can win with the best of them. Well, they can also lose with the best of them. So we'll see what happens there, but it should be an awesome matchup.
I was going to say, too bad you weren't going to the game tonight in Buffalo.
I know a couple people had asked, hey, are you going to the game? But I'm a weekend sports anchor at Channel 13 here, so I only do the home games so that I can, kind of do both. So the 5 to 6 hour drive is a tough one to do on a work day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wish I could go to the game tonight because, like I said, my friends John Googler from the Bandits and
Mhm.
Pat Gregor, they've got me into the National Lacrosse League. Just coming on my podcast and talking to me about the game, I started following it
Mhm.
and watching it, and now I'm hooked on it. And I'm actually been watching more of the lacrosse lately than the NHL playoffs.
Yeah, it's a fantastic league. I'm so honored to have a small part in it, but it's been the time of my life being a sideline reporter in the NLL. Just the interactions with coaches and players have been top notch. Every coach and player I've had a really good experience with, which is nice to see from a professional league because you see, when you look at the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, all those big four, it's kind of, you get the feeling that the players aren't always in for interviews. They're not always about promoting the league. And the NLL does such a great job with its players and coaches of, fan interaction and the interactions that are with the media. They're all so positive. So that's a good thing for the league when people want to cover you, people want to watch games, come down, get balls signed by players. Kids are always down around the railings at these games in the arena. So it's been a great experience so far, and I think they're doing it the right way.
And that's what I see too. Last week I was a media member with the Bandits, thanks to John, the radio guy setting it up, and I loved it. I ended up talking to Bud Bailey, who's a legendary sports writer in the Buffalo area for
Mhm.
many years, and he's covered a little National Lacrosse League since 2008. And he told me it's his favorite sport because the guys are down to earth, and I guess they don't act like some of the other athletes in the other sports. And he was telling me these guys were only getting about $1,000 US a game.
Mm. Yeah, I
So
wasn't sure. I was gonna say I don't know what the pay is, but it's a hard lifestyle too. Like these are guys who are working, and some of the coaches are retired, but some of them are still working as well. These players are working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 jobs. A lot of them. Some of them are working nights during the week, and then they turn around, they pick up, they fly to whatever city they're playing in, home or away, and they practice Friday night. For the most part, they practice Friday night, shoot around Saturday morning, play Saturday night, and they're back out of there on Sunday. And for a lot of these guys, most of them, they're flying. You have guys around the Buffalo area who live in the Buffalo area. For most of the guys on this Albany team, they're not local to this area. Some of them are, like Joe Rez lives out west. So there are guys who live close enough that they can drive, but most are even flying in for home games. And I think that's probably similar to a lot of teams throughout the league, maybe with the exception of some of the Canadian teams. You get some of the Canadian guys who live a little bit closer, but it's a tough life, and they do it with a smile on their faces, because at the end of the day, you know what, you're playing a game. And for a lot of these guys, it's just a second source of income.
I was gonna say, I forgot what I was gonna say again. Oh, this is what I wanted to ask you. Sometimes you forget if you don't write stuff down.
Yeah.
Overall, from what you've seen, how has the first year Albany's been doing? How has the city and the area taken this franchise? Their first year there since they came from relocated from New England.
Yeah, I think it's been a positive experience, Chris. I think, if you don't know a lot about Albany, this is, in terms of the United States, it is like a lacrosse hotbed. High school lacrosse in this area and downstate New York is absolutely huge. You get people, Division I talent coming out of this area, particularly, and down on the Long Island area all of the time. And so it's a hotbed. And we had the Albany Attack here back in the early 2000s, and it was a smash. I grew up going to Albany Attack games, and that was really my first kind of experience in lacrosse, and that made me love the game of lacrosse. Here, field is much more popular than box lacrosse, because we have Division I schools like Albany that's had a lot of success recently, and Siena. So people here are very used to the field game, and it will take a little bit of time, I think, to get fans used to the box game again, because all those fans of the Albany Attack are now kind of grown, and we have to be kind of re-ingratiated into it. But the experience has been really good. They've probably drawn, I would say, somewhere between like 3,500 to 4,000 on average. But I think the kind of where we would like to leave off is that last game against the Riptide. It was, listen, the regular season finale. I understand there was a lot on the line, but beautiful weather. So we finally had the opportunity for an outdoor block party, which it can take a while to get to that point in upstate New York. It's not always the nicest weather. So we had an outdoor block party, then moved into the arena. and they announced 6,600 fans, which I think that is where, that's where they hope to be headed, is to get that 5,000 to 7,000 fan mark every game. They didn't do that this year, but a winning team will help. So a team that's in the playoffs will help. And I just think people getting used to it and finally getting to the arena. We were in the middle of a pandemic to start the season, so there were so many things working against launching a new team in the Capital Region. But the experience has been great. And I think that final game against the Riptide is kind of where they hope to use as a jumping off point for next season.
Do you think long term this will succeed in Albany?
Yeah, I think it will. I think the hope is like to give it at least a few years. It is not going to be a short-term thing like, hey, it didn't work in year one, or hey, it's not as many fans as we hope to have in year one or year two. I think you always, no matter where you're going, you have to give franchises and teams a little bit of time to build momentum, to get people used to seeing the players, knowing the players, seeing the coaches, understanding the game. Because I think if you've never seen the game and you go to one of these games, it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? So you got to get used to the rules of the game, how it's different from field lacrosse, because, like I said, people aren't quite as familiar with box lacrosse as they are with field. So yeah, you got to give it a little bit of time. And I think next year will be better, and I could see this franchise really taking off in the following year. So hopefully this is a permanent home for what is now the Firewolves, formerly the Black Wolves.
Definitely. Now, I was going to ask you, what about the New York Riptide? Do you see that lasting long term, or do you think they might possibly have to relocate at some point?
Yeah, I don't know too much about the fan base, but what I do know is that they have the product on the field to succeed. They've done it the right way. The GM seems to have really kind of drafted well. You have a guy like Jeff Teat, who is, for all intents and purposes, the rookie of the year, in my opinion. You've got a guy like him as the kind of cornerstone of your franchise. And oh, by the way, a Callum Crawford, who's one of the best talents in the NLL. They have the pieces on the floor in order to succeed. I think they were already much better. I know they're not a playoff team this season, but they were already much better than their record led on. They beat Buffalo this year. So they're a team that is kind of sneaky good in a lot of ways. And I think that's Jeff Teat too, as crazy as that sounds. I think people maybe don't give him the respect that he deserves, because not in that they don't know he's talented, but he's almost sneaky in the way he goes about it. So I really think the Riptide are doing it the right way. Where they are is difficult because you are in a pro sports city. And anytime you're in a pro sports city, you are fighting against other teams for fans. So it's the only lacrosse team down there, which is good. I think that's a positive. But unlike up here, we don't have other pro sports franchises for them to fight against. We have Division I. We have the racetrack up in Saratoga. We have a minor league baseball team, which is now independent baseball. So the Firewolves can kind of run the show, whereas downstate, it's not quite as easy, but I think they're doing it the right way.
It's sort of like the Toronto Rock. They're still called the Toronto Rock, but
Yep.
they moved to Hamilton, which is about 40 minutes away from Toronto. They kept the name Toronto Rock, and so far what I've seen, the Rock have been averaging about 8,500 to 9,000 fans a game, which is more than they were getting in Toronto, because, as you know, Toronto's like the New York of Canada with
Exactly.
4 or 5 teams there. So I think the Rock, I admit it, I was wrong. I didn't think it was going to work in Hamilton, but so far it has, and it's actually better for me because it's less drive, less stress for me to find parking down there to see the Rock in Hamilton.
Yeah, and I think that's key, though. Like you said, it's the idea that you don't have. I understand Hamilton is just kind of outside of Toronto, but you're not fighting pro franchises on a weeknight, weekly basis, weekend. You give Hamilton their own little sport and their own team to get behind, which, of course, if in a town like Hamilton or a city like Hamilton, you are going to have most of the town that is interested and invested and wants to come out and support a team, because you know what, they're ours. Instead of having to drive the 40 minutes to Toronto or however far it is, now they don't have to do that. They can support a team in their own backyard, which is cool. And I think that's why it succeeded. In 8,500, that's an incredible number. If you can sustain that, there's no doubt that will be a successful team.
Definitely. Hey, quick, before I get to some questions, what are your thoughts on the 15th team coming in next year, the Las Vegas Desert Dogs? And I guess they'll be playing at the Miller Ultra Arena in Vegas, which is about 12,000 people. And I guess Steve Nash and Wayne Gretzky are going to have part ownership in that franchise.
Yeah, Steve Nash, Wayne Gretzky, Joe Tsai, who is also in with the Brooklyn Nets. So there's money there which is a good thing. You want money and ownership because they're probably willing to spend a little bit. It's great for the league. I think anytime you are adding teams, that means that the league is healthy, which is important. So you have 15 teams now, likely going to add a 16th in the next 1 or 2 years, I've heard. So that's a good thing. Vegas to me will be an interesting experiment because again, you're a pro sports town because you have the Raiders. They've talked about trying to get a baseball team there. I don't know if they will, but you are also, that is like the fun capital of the world. So aside from the Raiders, there are a million other things going on that you could do. So I will be very interested to see how that experiment goes. There are probably a lot of tourists who will go. I'm just not sure you're going to get like Vegas natives to go watch a sport like that, but we'll see. I think it's, like I said, it's great. A guy like Sean Williams is a face of the sport. So to have him as the head coach is a great thing. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the expansion draft too. It kind of has that ripple effect, Chris, where you've got an expansion draft, you've got to fill a team, and now you're also going to take away from other teams. So it totally can change the landscape of the NLL.
I was gonna say, ideally, I've talked to Pat Gregori about this too. Obviously, you want to have 16-team league, 8 in the East, 8 in the West. And one of the cities I think would be perfect for a lacrosse team would be Seattle because of the rivalry with Vancouver. Plus, they have the arena there right now, and I don't know if there's any interest in there, but to me, so Seattle would be a perfect location for that 8th Western team.
Yeah, I think that would be a great location. Obviously, it's got to be in the West because they're uneven now. I think Phoenix could be a possibility. They're a team that's, kind of struggled with their NHL team, so I'm not sure that the lacrosse team would be the best idea. But we've seen hockey and lacrosse in Phoenix kind of take a life of its own a little bit. So I think Phoenix could be an interesting spot out West. But other than Phoenix and Seattle, I'm not sure, unless you go smaller market, which is possible, but I'm not sure what town, you could kind of do that. For example, like a Hamilton to a Phoenix. So whatever Phoenix's Hamilton would be, maybe that's the way to go to try to get a smaller town behind that fan base behind them.
Yeah, from what I've been hearing, I think they're going the next 5 to 10 years would probably be ideally to have to a 20-team league, 10 in the East and 10 in the West. So, but
that would be
But what they're doing is being smart about it, adding a team here and not doing it too much at once, because then that can backfire as well.
Yeah, you oversaturate, I think, when you do that. And also, it's a great opportunity because there are plenty of players who deserve to be in the NLL, but the rosters aren't big enough and there aren't enough teams. So it would be nice to be able to give more players the opportunity to play in the NLL. But at the same time, if you were to add 5 teams, well, now you're oversaturating because we're going to be allowing too many players who are trying to cut their teeth in the NLL on teams, and maybe you diminish the product. So I think the idea of like called a slow burn, but like a slow drip is the way to go, and to allow Vegas to get in, get their feet underneath them, and then, okay, when you feel comfortable, you allow the next team.
Okay. I'm just going to get into some questions, Ashley. And okay, thanks. The first one I wanted to ask you, can you just tell my audience here in Ontario, I'm just near Toronto, not that far. Just tell them a little bit about yourself, and when did you decide to pursue a career in broadcasting?
Yeah, so this is funny. I always tell this story when I go speak to schools or at events or something like that. I knew that I wanted to be a sports broadcaster when I was in the 2nd grade. In elementary school here, I loved SportsCenter. It was my favorite show. So I really wanted to be Linda Cohn. And I thought, you know what, if I can get a job and it can be in sports, that would be the ultimate. Like, to get paid to do sports would be the ultimate dream. So I decided when I was in 2nd grade that I wanted to be on SportsCenter. And so the Albany area it's only about 2 hours and 15 minutes from Syracuse. I had a bunch of cousins and extended family that had lived in Syracuse, gone to Syracuse. I grew up a huge Syracuse fan. And then, I come to find out that they just so happened to have one of the best broadcasting schools in the country. So very early on, I was like, all right, well, now I want to go to Syracuse and I want to be a sports broadcaster. So that's what I did. I went to Syracuse. I studied broadcast journalism. But I decided at a very early age, and I always tell people when I talk to high school kids, like, I'm weird. I'm the exception to the rule. Don't feel like you need to know what you're going to do when you're in 2nd grade, because people don't normally know that. So I've been very fortunate to kind of follow the path that I wanted to from a very early age. But I've had a lot of help along the way. I've had, great support from my parents, my friends, my family, and I had a great education, which kind of gets your foot in the door. I had great internships, so it's been a fun ride so far.
Okay. One of my early guests, and I've befriended this gentleman, Stu Boyer, who was with WGRZ
Yes,
Channel 2 in Buffalo for
I know
35
Stu.
years. He's a huge Syracuse Orangeman fan, so
Yeah.
he kind of got excited when he saw you were coming on and stuff like that. I'm not sure he's a big lacrosse fan, but I
Yep.
know he's a huge sports fan and one of my favorite guests to have on my podcast over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I had interacted very just kind of briefly with Stu at my last job, which was at a different station in Albany. But we had kind of run in the same circles a little bit, knew the same people, and I had seen him on TV a bunch and maybe emailed with him a few times just about sharing content. So I know Stu; he's a legend. So yeah, I hope he's doing well.
Yes, he is, and I think he's excited about his Bills because they look like a Super Bowl
Ooh,
contender
yeah.
this year. So,
Listen, let's
but
hope for the city of Buffalo. Let's hope that they get that Super Bowl at some point.
definitely. Hey, my next question I wanted to ask you, and I've already learned my listening skills too. This one I wanted to ask you: did you have any mentors when you were breaking into broadcasting media?
Yeah, I think my biggest mentors were people that I interned with. So I did. I'll give you this story now. So I did a pretty cool internship when I was at Syracuse my sophomore year. I was selected as a group of like 30 students from SU to go abroad, and we interned at the 2006 Winter Olympics in Torino, Italy, which was pretty incredible. Not only for the experience of it all, but just for networking. Like I met and worked with some of the most talented people that the world has to offer at NBC Sports for the Olympics. So those just learning from those people for the 30 plus days that we were there was a really cool experience. And oh, by the way, it was in Italy. That's not so bad either. But along the way, I think some of my biggest mentors have been my other internships that I've had. So I interned at Channel 9 here, which is the Spectrum here locally, which they also have one in Buffalo. So I interned there my junior year, between my junior and senior years of college. And I worked in the sports department and I did pretty much everything. So there was a guy named Joe who was the sports director who I'm very good friends with to this day. And he taught me a ton. And they really just kind of let you spread your wings and do everything when you're an intern there. And there was the weekend sports anchor at the time was Marissa Jacks, and she's still at that Spectrum station. And I think they probably see her some in Buffalo. So those two have been mentors for a really long time for me. I learned a lot from them. And then at my next job, a guy named Roger Weiland, who's a legend here. He's our sports director at News Channel 13. He's been here since 1986. I've learned a ton from him in the industry as well. So, everyone that you tend to work with and cross paths has something to offer, but certainly the people that I've worked closest with have had the greatest effect on my career.
If that person's who I think she is, Marissa, I think I'm going to have her on as eventually as well because
Awesome.
she does the play by play also for the Albany Platoons,
True.
and I caught one of her games against the National Basketball League of Canada, which I'm a media member of, and I enjoyed her broadcast. I got in touch with her, and she's trying to find dates to come on my podcast and talk about her career with Spectrum and sports and
Perfect.
the basketball league too. So yeah,
That's great.
it's just funny how it's a small world and how fast you can connect with people even doing a podcast.
It is a very, very small world. Yeah, I worked with Marissa for 5 years at Spectrum, and we are also still very good friends. She was at my wedding, so yeah, she would be a great guest. So I hope you get her on.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I've learned about a podcast, doing all your shows, producing, writing your shows, guest booking alone, it's a full-time job.
Full-time job. There is no doubt. My husband does a podcast, video podcast on 13 that I have
Yeah.
helped him out with, and he will tell you the same thing. Booking guests alone will keep you busy enough forever.
I was gonna say I'll have to get him to come on maybe one day have him come on my podcast and talk about his career as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure he would love to.
So, and I like guys who have the same name as me too, Chris.
Yeah, there you go.
Definitely. Okay, I was gonna say, my next question before we get back to the Albany Buffalo game today, what's a normal day like for a sports anchor reporter?
Yeah, I think the best part about this job is that every day is different. So, while I'm doing some of the same things, so every day I shoot with a video camera, I write scripts, I edit video, And most days I go, weekend days I go out and anchor. Some days I report. Other days I'm not on air. But while that's all the same, every day is different. I'm covering a different game. I'm covering a different sport. So when I go in the afternoons, and honestly, every schedule is different. Like today, I'll go in around noontime and I will shoot several events. I'm going to the America East Championship game for the Albany women is today. So I'm going to that game. I will shoot from start to finish and I will get interviews post game. And then I will go back to the station, write and edit that script. And at the end of the day, it'll go on the air. So most days are like that. But like I said, there are some days when I'm covering the Firewolves. There are other days during the summer when I'm going up to the racetrack. There are days when I'm covering a Valley Cats baseball game. So I think that's the most exciting part of my job is just that, like, while every day is the same, it's never the same. So that's kind of cool. And so, yeah, today I'll spend most of my day gathering content and putting it together like you do for your show. And then at 11 o'clock, and honestly, so normally we have a 6, a 9, and an 11. Today is a very rare exception. The Kentucky Derby is on our air at 6 o'clock. So we won't have a 6. Yeah. The Firewolves are on our air at 9 o'clock. So, it overlaps. So that pushes us off then. So we only have an 11 o'clock show tonight. So I'm going to go out and just gather content all day. And then I'll go on at 11 p.m. and, do my hair, my makeup, and then go out on the desk and anchor it all. So yeah, different, but the same in a short long roundabout way.
And that's why I want to try to get in the radio media industry is because I do camera work too with Rogers, which is a major cable company in Toronto. So I get to see the live TV side of it, being behind the camera and the podcast. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can and do as many things as I can. And I love doing different things and learning new things all the time.
I think in this industry, you have to be we always say, be as versatile as you can be. You got to be like a Swiss Army knife. The more you know, the better, because that's the way the industry is kind of trending. They want people who can do a lot and know a lot about everything. So it's smart of you to do that.
Yeah, and I'm also taking up blogging too. So I just did a blog on my Buffalo Bandits game day experience last weekend in Buffalo as well. So that's what I'm trying to do as well. So I just want to show a video clip from your LinkedIn page with an interview with Doug Jamieson. I do this with all my guests. I like to just show a little bit of work for my audience of my guests, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, no problem. It's just about a minute and a half clip.
26 saves tonight. Did you feel as good as you looked out there? I think Brendan said 23 saves in a row at one point.
Yeah, like you said, after I make the first couple stops, it's you kind of get in a groove, and the defense was doing a good job giving me like kind of bad angle shots that I like to see. So yeah, I definitely felt like I was in a groove tonight.
After the 0-2 start, you guys have won 3 in a row now. Is it a matter of just playing together more consistently? Confidence? What is it?
I think we found our identity. All our wins have been low scoring, kind of tight defensive battles, and I think that's how we have to play. And I think we're just finding that we're hitting our stride now, I think.
Coming into next weekend, you guys go back-to-back for the first time this season with Georgia. How do you approach that any differently than a single game?
No, not really. Just try to take care of your bodies even more than you already do, right? Hydrating and stuff like that. But no, it's not too different.
Congratulations, Doug.
Thanks.
Guys, back up to you.
Anyways, that clip was courtesy of your LinkedIn page. I usually get them off YouTube, but I saw it on your LinkedIn page.
Sure.
And I like to show my audience a little bit of my guest work on there. So
yeah, what was that's back when we were masked up still.
I was going to say, yes.
I finally my favorite part of the job.
Yeah, I finally went to my first sporting event last week in Buffalo with out wearing a mask, and I kept my hands clean, and it felt nice not having to wear the mask because it's been a long 2 years.
It does. I always just think in a loud arena, I have the earpiece. I'm trying to hear. My voice is muffled. I don't know if they can hear me that well. And it's nice to be able to see lips when, the arena is loud. So I was glad to be able to rid the mask. A few games after that, maybe we've been without the mask of, probably 5 or 6 weeks now. But it's been nice to be able to be free of that while you're trying to do some sidelines there.
Or when you do camera work, which I was doing, my camera kept fogging up.
I know.
So I had to tell the producer, look, I got to cheat a little bit and put my mask down just a little bit because I can't see and do action. As you know, doing camera work for hockey is probably the fastest sport out of all of them to keep up with. And I can't keep up if I can't see what I'm shooting at.
Exactly. Yeah, I had the same problem because for the The small cameras, smaller, they're on your shoulder. You're putting your face into the lens. And then as you breathe, it just, it was brutal.
Definitely. So that leads into my next question, Ashley. Overall thoughts on the return of the National Lacrosse League after being shut down due to the pandemic? And I guess you've already brought this up. We mentioned it. Overall, lacrosse has been box lacrosse has been received in Albany so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think the return of the league has been great. I think, when the league first came back and when the team was coming to Albany, I talked to them a lot about, hey, do you just have a little bit of extra motivation after missing a full season? And the answer was resoundingly yes. Like, the game that these guys love got taken away from them for a year. So to have it back, I think it's been a huge success. I think, especially for even the older guys, it maybe makes you a little more nostalgic for, oh, hey, like, I'm toward the end of my career and you never know what can happen. So I think it just makes you appreciate the game a little bit more if you didn't already. So it's a reminder that you never know what the world can bring. Nobody ever would have thought there was going to be a pandemic and that it would shut down the entire sports world. So it makes you you don't take anything for granted anymore. But I think the return has been great. The level of lacrosse has been fantastic. We have some of the best lacrosse players in the world in this league. I mentioned Jeff Teat, but a guy like Lyle Thompson, like, these are world-class athletes who we get to see on a night in, night out basis. So I feel lucky to be a part of that and be on the sidelines to see some of these guys. Albany for sure, but also guys that come in on visiting teams who I've never gotten to see play before. So I feel lucky in that regard. And yeah, like I said, Albany, I think it's been a good start. And I think they hope that it's better even from here in Albany.
Okay. And that leads to my next question. Can you just tell my audience a little bit about your role as the sideline reporter for the Albany Firewolves broadcast? And how did you come about that?
Sure. I had a prior relationship with the Firewolves president, George Manius. He was also in charge of a team that used to be here, that still is here, called the Albany Empire when they were part of the AFL. That's the Arena Football League. They're now part of the NAL. They're under new ownership and management. But George moved over into the Firewolves when they came to be part of Albany. He was a huge part of that. So he's in charge down there, and I had a prior relationship with him. So he came to me with the opportunity. And believe me, it was a quick yes. So sidelines, it's always something that I've wanted to do and that I haven't been able to do on a consistent basis. So this is really the first time that I've been able to, I always say, like, be embedded with a team, basically. So cover all of the Firewolves home games. And we were, neutral broadcast because we work for the NLL. So neutral broadcast every week before the games. So anytime we have a game on a Saturday, every week I would work with Andy Towers, who is our color analyst, Brendan Glasheen, who is our play-by-play guy, two of the best in the business. And we would meet virtually because everybody's in different places. We would meet virtually with the home coach. So we would meet with Glenn Clark, and we would also meet with the opposing coach, whoever that was. So last week it was Dan Ladisor. We would do virtual calls with them, probably for about a half hour, and basically interview them, talk about the game coming up, the health of their team, how they thought they matched up against one another, basically anything that could help us prepare for the broadcast. So on a weekly basis, that would be what I would do. I would spend a couple, probably an hour, half hour and a half hour with each of them. And then I would break down film. Honestly, I would just watch. By the end of the year, I had seen so much Firewolves lacrosse that I didn't feel like I necessarily needed to break down film for them. But I would always watch a game, at least, of the opposing team, most likely their most recent game. So I knew kind of who was on the field. And I would listen to the broadcasters talk about those guys because they're players that I haven't yet had the chance to meet and some of whom I don't even know yet. So that was what my week consists of as in a sideline reporter role. And then once you get to the game, you're responsible for a pregame interview, a coach. You talk to Glenn Clark and toward the end of the first quarter, opposing coach, beginning of the second quarter, a player interview with a winning team, as we go into the half. Sometimes we would get a player from the trailing team as we come out of the half. And then, of course, an interview at the end of the game with a winning player. And then anything in between. So my job was to kind of, aside from those, planned interviews, my job would be to add anything I can at any point. So a lot of times when the Albany guys came back, so a guy like Lyle Thompson, a guy like Blaze Reardon, guys that I know and have a relationship with, I would talk to them at shoot around or before the game, just for kind of stories, their feelings about coming back. And then that would be stuff that I shared throughout the game. So it's kind of my job to create a few storylines and to pipe in wherever I feel like I can throughout the broadcast.
Will you be back next year? Or would you like to be back next year?
I would love to be back next year. I hope to be back next year. It just sort of depends on where I am. So this business is so fluid. If I'm still in Albany, I will certainly do it. But you never know where you're going to be. So if I'm not on to my next thing by then, I would certainly love to be back. It has been, and I've told my husband this, I told George Manius this, it's been the time of my life. It's been one of the most fun things I've done in my career to be a part of this league and to be a sideline reporter. So I 100% hope to be back next year.
Okay. And one thing I really like about this league now too is getting the product on TSN's Game of the Week with John Abbott, Pat Gregor, and Ashley Docking, who's their sideline reporter. They all do a great job. And getting it on ESPN, even if it's on ESPN Plus, it's getting it more exposure. And I know the Bandits have radio coverage. Do the Firewolves have radio coverage as well?
They do. Yep. We are on 104.5 The Team ESPN radio here. And that is Dan Ball is the play-by-play guy of that. And he actually filled in with Brendan the last 2 games for us on TV as the color analyst. So he's a little bit of a jack of all trades. And Mike Tesserero was the color guy for us on radio. So they are on radio 104.5 The Team. If there's not Yankees on. So the Yankees are also on that station. So they were sometimes on other stations, but we do have radio as well.
Okay, because I think that's great. The league is getting themselves on more television and a little more radio as well. More exposure, basically.
Yeah, and the ESPN Plus deal here is great. Access to the league. You know what I mean? If you pay the $5 a month or whatever it is, you have access to every game in the NLL, which is ideal. And then ESPN Linear. And that alone, if you can get on linear occasionally, that is huge because people can just kind of stumble across it, which is the best thing.
Okay. That leads to my next question. I could talk to you for 2-3 hours, but obviously I've got an appointment for a family member at 10 o'clock and I know you got to get going too. So this one, I'm going to combine this question. Overall thoughts on the 22 Firewolves season, 9-9 overall. I guess 0-2 against the Bandits, but they played them tough. 1 overtime loss in Albany. And thoughts on tonight's playoff game, which is win or go home against the Bandits tonight at 7:30 in Buffalo. And what are some keys to a Firewolves win and some players for people in my audience to watch out for on the Albany team?
Yeah, I think it was a really tough start to the season for Albany. Just kind of getting their legs underneath them. They had a really hard time finding offense. And once they found offense, you saw Joe Resiteritz just kind of take over and make this team what it was. And there were still times when they struggled. I think if you talk to Glenn Clark, he would tell you the biggest question mark is consistent offense. They would have times when they would score 6 goals in a quarter, and then they would score no goals. And that first game in Buffalo, if you don't remember, the entire game was scored at one end of the arena. So Albany scored all the goals in one quarter. Buffalo scored all the goals in the next quarter. Albany scored all the goals in the next quarter, and Buffalo scored all the goals in the next quarter. So only one team scored in each quarter, and they were all scored on the same goal, which is so bizarre. But it just shows you how kind of streaky the game is. We talked about runs. That was a little bit of a bizarre game. The game in Albany was a much more competitive, back and forth, free flowing. Albany tied it late, put it to overtime, and then Buffalo won in overtime. So I think this is a great matchup. I talked to the guys after the win against the Riptide last weekend, and I said, listen, if you're going to get Buffalo at some point, right? Like, it's the best team in the league. You're going to get Buffalo at some point. Do you prefer to have it in a 1-game setting? And the answer was resoundingly yes. You know what? You're going to throw everything you can at the best team in the league that you've been very competitive with and that I think they match up well against. You're going to throw everything you can at them and take your shot. Because I don't think I don't think you're going to beat that team in a 3-game series. It's hard to beat that team in a 3-game series. So I think, you know what? Let's try it one time and see what we've got. And it's also hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. So they've lost to them twice, and now maybe they go get one. The matchup, I think, is great. The goalie matchup, to me, is most intriguing. Matt Vince is probably the goaltender of the year. We'll see when it all is said and done. But he's been fantastic for them. And Dougie Jamieson is the reigning goaltender of the year. He won it the last time they had a season. So you've got two of the best in the world going at it. Albany is feeling really good about themselves. And this is kind of where I would go, is like we talked about a Buffalo team that's lost 3 of their last 4. Not that they're not feeling good about themselves, but that's not the best way to go into the playoffs. Albany has won 3 in a row. They've scored a ton of goals. They're coming off a season high 17 goals in that win over the Riptide in their final game of the regular season. That's where you want to be as you head into the playoffs. The last 3 weeks of the season essentially have been playoff games. The Albany Firewolves have had to win out in order to get into the playoffs, and that's what they've done. So I think they're in the spot that they want to be, but this is a Bandits offense that can just turn it on in a second. They lead the league in goals in the regular season, 247. That's a ton of goals. And a guy like Dane Smith, who between he and Joe Resiteritz, one of them will win the MVP. He's been unstoppable. Last week was the first time he was held to 0 points, on 11 shots by the Rock. So they did a fantastic job on him. It's the first time this season that he's been held under 4 points. So that doesn't happen very often. And I'm sure it's not going to happen tonight when they play. He's hard to control. So I think if you can contain him a little bit, you've got a chance, but that's certainly easier said than done. And a guy like Josh Byrne has had a lot of success against the Albany Firewolves as well. So yeah, you circle the best players on the floor. Dane Smith on the Buffalo side and Joe Resiteritz on the Albany side, and you see who comes out on top.
I was going to say one of my keys for tonight's game is a strong start, because it's easier to play ahead with a lead than to have to chase and chase and chase.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens, but I think the first period is going to be very important.
And I think that's even more important for an Albany team that when they've gotten behind in the past, they get out of their game. They tend to push and they tend to try to do things that are not their offense. You know what I mean? Because any team that gets behind presses. So they get out of the things that they talk about in practice and that they want to do each and every week. They get out of those things. And then when you're chasing and then you start to not score because you're getting out of your offense, then it's just an uphill battle all the way. So I think you're right. I think a good start, even to be kind of back and forth, is where you would hope it would be. But I think that would be the best place for Albany, would be not even to get out to a huge lead, because you know those disappear pretty quick, but just to kind of trade goals for the first half and then see what happens from there. As long as they're in it, going to the fourth, that's all you can ask for, right?
Okay, I just got 2 quick questions I want to ask you. This one, quick prediction for the 2022 NL Championship. Who do you see coming out of the West, and who do you see coming out of the East? And what's your thought on these best-of-3 series?
Yeah, I think, listen, the Mammoth is great. So on the other side of that, this is going to sound crazy, and I know I'm probably a little biased toward the East, but I think Philly has a real chance against San Diego in a 1 game. I do see Philly coming out of that game, honestly, because the East has had a ton of success against the West this year. I believe Albany was 3-0 against West teams this year and then got beaten up by all the teams in their own conference. So yeah, I would say probably Philly, Colorado is the matchup we might see. And then maybe Colorado coming out of that, which is the 3 seed, which would be kind of interesting. And then Rock, I'm going to go with the Firewolves because I can't go against the Firewolves. That would be terribly awful of me to do. So I'm going to pick the Firewolves for the upset tonight. And then if it's between the Rock and the Firewolves, I think anybody's got a chance. I think, to me, the Rock is playing like one of the best teams on the planet right now. But so have the Firewolves the last 3 games. So I can't, I'm going to get fired if I pick against the Firewolves. So let's go Firewolves, Mammoth in the finals. I'm not sure that that's going to play out the right way, but I got to go with, my side. I'm going to get fired.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a dilemma because I've gotten to know the guys on the Rock and the Bandits, so I like both teams.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. Anything
like
can
the Rock
happen
a
in these
lot.
shirts. Yeah, they have from
They're
what I've
really
seen,
good.
the Rock, I would say, are the best team I've seen so far. The Bandits
Yeah.
are good too, but the thing that separates the Rock from the Bandits is the Rock, I think, are a little better defensively in their own end than the Bandits are. I think the Bandits are terrific offensively, but overall, the team, I think the Rock might be a little bit stronger. And as for the West, the only team I really seen this year is San Diego, and I wasn't overly impressed with them. So
Yeah.
I do think the NL Championship winner is going to come from the East.
I agree with you on that. 100%. I just think the East is stronger. And like I said, they kind of beat up on one another this year. But yeah, if we're talking about a team playing like the best team in the league right now, it's the Toronto Rock. And that's, I think I could say that pretty confidently. The best team playing the best 3 games, maybe in the last 3 weeks. Albany's right there. But we'll see what Albany team we get, whether it's that team or whether it's a team that kind of struggles to find offense consistently, like Glenn Clark said. So I think Albany is exactly where they want to be. And I'm so pumped for tonight's game.
Okay, same here. I'm going to be watching it. So, I'm going to wrap this up, Ashley. I wish I had more time, but I was going to say this last question I wanted to ask you. Any advice for those looking to pursue a career in broadcast media? And where can my audience, again, find you on social media?
Yeah, I'll start with the social media. So I am at Miller, MILLER 247 time, TIME. At Miller Time on Twitter. I also have a professional Facebook page, Ashley Miller WNYT. I'm on Instagram at Miller247 time. I don't have TikTok. I'm too old for that. I always say I couldn't handle it, or Snapchat. I don't have any of that.
I finally joined TikTok about 8 months ago, but I
Ooh.
use it strictly for promoting my podcast and doing some live interviews on there. So,
Well,
to me, TikTok can be a useful tool if you use it right.
yeah, I would have to learn. I may need you to teach me how to use it because I don't know anything
It's
about it.
Okay, no problem, because I learned how to do it, and now I use it to promote myself and do some live interviews on there. So it is a useful tool.
Cool. Well, maybe I'll have to take your advice and try it out. As for advice in terms of a broadcasting career, I think internships are huge in this career. If you can do internships, I did 3 of them. If you can do them, definitely do. Don't expect to get paid for them in the broadcast industry because that's generally not how it works. Every once in a while, you get paid for an internship, but not too often. It's usually like school credit or something. So I'd say do internships and network. If you can do like job shadows, if you can just go in and follow someone around for the day and just kind of get a feel for what the day is like, that will quickly tell you if that is what you want to do or not. Like coming into the station with me for a day and seeing me run around like a crazy person and shoot and write and edit and sweat my face off and then have to put my makeup on, you may be like, yeah, I don't think that's what I want to do. But you will quickly know if like that's your thing or not. And I think that's important to kind of get a feel for the actual industry and see what it's like and whether or not you can hack it, but whether or not you even want to hack it, because some people are just like, nah, I'm all set.
Okay, and I was gonna say I'm lucky right now with doing this podcast 3 to 4 times a week, plus my volunteer work with Rogers TV. So, and you're right, contacts is huge, and I've also made a lot contacts, and I've also made a lot of friendships from this, and also, like I said, John from the Bandits last week gave me an opportunity to be a media member at a Bandits game and see what it's like on a game night, which was an awesome experience.
I've heard it's wild. I would love to get out there. I've heard it's wild. So Joe Rez used to play for the Bandits and he's going back out there. And so we had talked to him about going back and he was like, you got to shut that crowd down early, because if they're into it, he said they'll be into it no matter what. But if you can get the Bandits behind, like if you can get on top of the Bandits and just get them to like be a little bit subdued, he said it makes your life a lot easier because that crowd is just insane.
And you should track out a Rock home game here next year too, because their crowds are pretty good too, energetic and stuff like that. Hey Ashley, I was going to say I'd love to talk to you more, but I've got to cut this short. But I was going to say I hope to have you back on again in the future, and maybe we can talk a little more and maybe talk about the Yankees and the Mets and stuff like that as well.
I would love to. Chris, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and enjoy the lacrosse games tonight. And good luck to the Albany Firewolves, and we'll see what happens tonight against those Buffalo Bandits.
It'll be a great one.
Okay, thank you so much, and I'll download this podcast later today on audio form, and I'll send you a link as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks, Ashley. Have a great day.
You too.
anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast with Ashley Miller. She's a sports reporter anchor for News Channel 13 in Albany, New York, and also a sideline reporter for the National Lacrosse League, and does all the Albany Firewolves games as well. So, anyways, yeah, so we got a couple games tonight. We got Philadelphia at San Diego at 10:30, and we have Albany at Buffalo at 7:30 from the KeyBank Center. That game is on ESPN Plus, TSN.ca, and also on 1520 The Bet in Buffalo with John Googler doing the call as well. So I'm going to wrap this podcast show up, guys. I have another commitment, but again, I want to say thank you so much to Ashley Miller for coming on season 3, episode 35 of Live with CDP podcast. This is my 145th podcast in just over 2 years. So, it's great to have somebody to come on to talk about the National Lacrosse League. Guys, check out the National Lacrosse League as well, NLL.com as well. You can check out, I put it down here as well, NLL.com schedule 2022 playoff breaker schedule, a broadcast schedule as well. And also, guys, this is Buffalo Bandits' first home playoff game since 2019. The last NLL champion was the 2019 Calgary Roughnecks, who defeated the Bandits. And last night, Calgary was eliminated at home by the Colorado Mammoths, 16-12. So, anyways, guys, just to let you know, my next Live with CDP podcast is this Monday, May 9th at 2 o'clock. My guest is jazz singer Barbara Mantini. So tune in for season 3, episode 36 this Monday at 2 o'clock. Again, guys, you can watch my podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and also I will download this podcast to Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor FM, Radio Public, LinkedIn, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and LinkedIn. So anyways, guys, I have to call it a show, but I want to say thank you again to Ashley for coming on, and I hope you guys enjoy the Lacrosse League games tonight and the NHL games. Lots of sports going on right now. So we'll see you guys this Monday at 2 o'clock with Barbara Mantini, a jazz singer from the Niagara Falls area. Have a great day, guys, and enjoy the lacrosse games tonight with Albany, Buffalo, 7:30, and Philly and San Diego at 10:30. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you Monday at 2 o'clock for Live with CDP podcast.